Well, hello there, squirrels. Let's read while the sun's still shining. What? Hopefully I'm not, so don't feel sleepy right now, but that don't mean I won't get that way. Dear sweet Jesus. Dear sweet Jesus, please help me not read myself to sleep. Y'all get sleepy when I read to y'all? Oh, have mercy. Sorry, I pushed the button too quick on the record. I usually wait for the book to come up because sometimes it takes a little while, but it's here. We are on chapter 15. First part. All right, let's go. Inspector Craddock had made an appointment with Harold Crackenthorpe at his office, and he and Sergeant Weatherall arrived there punctually. The office was on the 4th floor of a big block of city offices. Inside, everything showed prosperity and the acme of modern business taste. A neat young woman took his name, spoke in a discreet murmur through a telephone, and then rising showed them into Harold Crackenthorpe's own private office. Harold was sitting behind a large leather-topped desk and was looking as impeccable and self-confident as ever. If, as the inspector's private knowledge led him to surmise, he was close upon Queer Street, no trace of it showed. What's up with the Queer Street thing? He looked up with a frank, welcoming interest. "Good morning, Inspector Craddock. I hope this means that you have some definite news for us at last." "Hardly that, I'm afraid, Mr. Crackenthorpe. It's just a few more questions I'd like to ask." "More questions? Surely by now we have answered everything imaginable." "I dare say it feels like that to you, Mr. Crackenthorpe, but it's just a question of our regular routine." "Well, what is it this time?" He spoke impatiently. "I should be glad if you could tell me exactly what you were doing on the afternoon and evening of 20th December last, say between the hours of 3 p.m. and midnight. I thought I'd read this before. Hang on, let me check something. I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes, I did.
How do you know if your soap actually stops?
Oh, be quiet, Loomy. I did read chapter 15, part 1, but my bookmark was there, so hang on, let me find. Hopefully I got another bookmark. Yes, sorry about that. We're on part 2 of chapter 15. Well, I'm glad I didn't read a whole lot till I figured it out. Alfred Crackenthorpe had a flat in West Hampstead, in a big modern building of slightly jerry-built type with a large courtyard in which the owners of flats parked their cars with a certain lack of consideration for others. The flat was the modern built-in type, evidently rented, furnished. It had a long plywood table that led down the wall, a divan bed, and various chairs of improbable proportions. Alfred Crackenthorpe met them with an engaging friendliness, but was, the inspector thought, nervous. "I'm intrigued," he said. "Can I offer you a drink, Inspector Craddock?" He held up various bottles invitingly. "No, thank you, Mr. Crackenthorpe." "As bad as that?" He laughed at his own little joke, then asked what it was all about. Inspector Craddock said his little piece. "What was I doing on the afternoon and evening of 20th December? How should I know? Why, that's what, over 3 weeks ago? Your brother Harold has been able to tell us very exactly. Brother Harold, perhaps, not Brother Alfred," he added with a touch of something, envious malice, possibly. "Harold is a successful member of the family. Busy, useful, fully employed, a time for everything and everything at that time. Even if he were to commit a murder, shall we say, it would be carefully timed and exact. Any particular reason for using that example? Oh no, it just came into my mind as a supreme absurdity. Now, about yourself. Alfred spread out his hands. It's as I tell you, I've no memory for times or places. If you were to say Christmas Day now, then I should be able to answer you. There's a peg to hang it on. I know where I was Christmas Day. We spent that with my father at Brockhampton. I really don't know why. He grumbles at the expense of having us and would grumble that we never came near him if we didn't come. We really do it to please my sister. And you did it this year? Yes. But unfortunately your father was taken ill, was he not? Craddock was pursuing a sideline deliberately, led by the kind of instinct that often came to him in his profession. He was taken ill, living like a sparrow in that glorious cause of economy. Suddenly, full eating and drinking had its effect. That was all, was it? That was all it was it? Of course, what else? I gathered that his doctor was worried. Oh, that old fool Quimper, Alfred spoke quickly and scornfully. It's no use listening to him, Inspector. He's an alarmist of the worst kind. Indeed, he seemed a rather sensible kind of man to me. He's a complete fool. Father's not really an invalid. There's nothing wrong with his heart, but he takes in Quimper completely. Naturally, when Father really felt ill, he made a terrific fuss and had Quimper going and coming, asking questions, going into everything he'd eaten and drunk. The whole thing was ridiculous. Alfred spoke with unusual heat. Craddock was silent for a moment or two, rather effectively. Alfred fidgeted, shot him a quick glance, and then said petulantly, "Well, what is all this? What do you want to know? Where I was on a particular Friday 3 or 4 weeks ago?" "So you do remember that it was a Friday? I thought you said so." "Perhaps I did," said Inspector Craddock. "At any rate, Friday 20th is the day I'm asking about." "Why?" "A routine inquiry." "That's nonsense. Have you found out something more about the woman, about where she came from?" "Our information is not yet complete." Alfred gave him a sharp glance. I hope you're not being led aside by this wild theory of Emma's that she might have been my brother Edmund's widow. That's complete nonsense. This Martine did not at any rate apply to you?" "To me? Good Lord, no. That would have been a laugh." "She would be more likely, you think, to go to your brother Harold?" "Much more likely. His name's frequently in the papers. He's well off. Trying to touch there wouldn't surprise me. Not that she'd have got anything. Harold's as tight-fisted as the old man himself. Emma, of course, is the soft-hearted one of the family, and she was Edmund's favorite sister. All the same, Emma isn't credulous. She was quite alive to the possibility of this woman being phony. She had it all laid on for the entire family to be there, and a hard-headed solicitor as well." "Very wise," said Craddock. "Was there a definite date fixed for this meeting?" "It was to be soon after Christmas, the weekend of the 27th. He stopped. "Ah," said Craddock pleasantly, "so I see some dates have a meaning to you. I've told you no definite date was fixed, but you talked about it when?" "I really can't remember." "And you can't tell me what you yourself were doing on Friday 20th December?" "Sorry, my mind's an absolute blank." "You don't keep an engagement book?" "Can't stand the things. The Friday before Christmas, it shouldn't be too difficult." I'd played golf one day with a likely prospect. Alfred shook his head. No, that was the week before. I probably just mooched around. I spent a lot of my time doing that. I find one's business gets done in bars more than anywhere else. Perhaps the people here or some of your friends may be able to help. Maybe I'll ask them, do what I can. Alfred seemed more sure of himself now. I can't tell you what I was doing that day, he said, but I can tell you what I wasn't doing. I wasn't murdering anyone in the long barn. Why should you say that, Mr. Crackenthorpe? Come now, my dear inspector. You're investigating this murder, aren't you? And when you begin to ask where you on such and such a day at such and such a time, you're narrowing down things. I'd very much like to know why you've hit on Friday the 20th between what? Lunchtime and midnight? It couldn't be medical evidence, not after all this time. Did somebody see the deceased sneaking into the barn that afternoon? She went in and she never came out, etc. Is that it? The sharp black eyes were watching him narrowly, but Inspector Craddock was far too old a hand to react to that sort of thing. I'm afraid we'll have to let you guess about that, he said pleasantly. Police are so secretive. Not only the police, I think, Mr. Crackenthorpe. You could remember what you were doing on that Friday if you tried. Of course, you may have reasons for not wishing to remember. You won't catch me that way, Inspector. It's very suspicious, of course. Very suspicious. Very suspicious indeed that I can't remember, but there it is. Wait a minute now. I went to Leeds that week. Stayed at a hotel close to the town hall. Can't remember its name, but you'd find it easy enough. Wait. That might have been on the Friday. We'll check up, said the inspector unemotionally. He rose. I'm sorry you couldn't have been more cooperative, Mr. Crackenthorpe. Most unfortunate of me. There's Cedric with a safe alibi, and Ibiza and Harold no doubt checked the business appointments and public dinners every hour, and here I am with no alibi at all. Very sad and also silly. We've already told you I don't murder people, and why should I murder an unknown woman anyhow? What for? Even if the corpse is the corpse of Edmund's widow, why should any of us wish to do away with her? Now, if she'd been married to Harold in the war and had suddenly reappeared, then it might have been awkward for the respectable Harold, bigamy and all that. But Edmund, why, we'd all have enjoyed making Father stump up a bit to give her an allowance and send the boy to a decent school. Decent school. Father would have been wild, but he couldn't, in decency, refuse to do something. Won't you have a drink before you go, Inspector? Sure, too bad I haven't been able to help you. That was a question, sure. And part 3, and I think I'm going to stop before my eyes get too tired. Sorry about that. Anyway, love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. I got a happy mail coming up. Whoop, whoop. Love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Bye.